Interesting stuff. Yeah, there's just so much in each verse. It's difficult to really pick out like what all to talk about. Those were some great points though. Titus chapter 1, verse 8. But hospitable, a lover of good, self-controlled, upright, holy, and disciplined. Now let's unpack some of these adjectives used to describe the elder / overseer. The word for hospitable here is philexonon in Greek. Again, Louw-Nida gives the definition as pertaining to showing hospitality to strangers or to be hospitable. An interesting note is the fact that the Greek word for brotherly love here is philos. That's brotherly love here, so that's the first part of philexonon. The sen part can also mean guest. So literally, what we have is a compound word carrying with it the meaning to be loving like a brother would to your guests, which is an interesting view. The word here for lover of good is philagathon in Greek. Again, Louw-Nida gives a definition of pertaining to liking or loving what is good. Notice again that the word philos is in the word. And one of the Greek words for love, again, the Greek word for brotherly love. Now, the Greek word agathos means excellent. Notice again here this emphasis on love. So it's the lover of excellence in a moral sense, you might say. Now, the word for holy here is hoson. The definition for this word given by Louw-Nida is pertaining to being holy in the sense a friar moral qualities and possessing certain essentially divine qualities in contrast with what is human, holy or pure divine. An important aspect to keep in mind about holiness is that Paul and the rest of the New Testament writers would have likely had the Old Testament idea of being set apart in view. So intrinsic to being holy is these moral qualities and being set apart. So when they talk about things being holy, there's a certain element, even in the New Testament, of set apartness, just from the Aramaic background that Paul was likely thinking of. But it really means like the divine qualities in contrast of having human qualities. So we've got at least three of those down. I didn't want to go too long, so Chris.
Well, there's good. I covered some of the other ones. He transitions here, I thought was interesting, into all these positive arguments or positive cases. He says before, don't be a striker, don't be given to filthy lucre, don't have this, don't have that. But here he says all the things that a pastor should be, and he describes what I kind of like to call, I know you also use the term, sort of the heart of a pastor, which I consider a special gift to some people, that they have this heart that loves people so much and wants to be hospitable. A person who has this kind of love, the Greek word, as you mentioned, the brotherly love for people. That's a unique thing that pastors should and need to have, and it's absolutely crucial, I would submit, for them to have that, because of the context of the loving on people that they have to do, and the counseling and the caring and the being there at the funerals and the this and the that. I mean, it's just not everybody can do that. So it's a gift that they have, and here he's calling for that gift in people. He mentions this term sober, which is sophrone, I guess. But anyway, it means a safe or sound mind, kind of self-controlled or moderate, and not necessarily just sober in the way that we think of it. It's quite different. So the person that so this is the kind of person, just in general, verse 8, that Paul told Titus to look for among the churches in Crete, people with the heart of a pastor. Mike?
Good stuff. Titus chapter 1, verse 9. He must hold firm to the trustworthy word as taught. He may be able to give instruction in sound doctrine and also to rebuke those who contradict it. This idea, to hold firm to the trustworthy word as taught, really is bringing us back to the very fundamentals of Christianity. Paul is saying here, stand on the unchanging word of God. Hold on to it tenaciously. He's also linking it to the teaching that they got, perhaps from Paul himself, almost certainly carried on from, obviously Titus and others of his inner circle. It's interesting to zoom out again and look at this in the context of today. We are to be a link to what Paul taught and to what others who have come before us have taught. We should really know what church fathers said and where doctrine comes from. Above all, we really need to know the Bible really well. It's our only guide, so we must be jealous for the text, not just into the text. We should really be jealous for the text. Now, hold firm to trustworthy sayings as taught. Paul continues and gives us just one of the many reasons why we should do so. He writes, so that he may be able to give instruction in sound doctrine and also to rebuke those who contradict it. One of the great things about knowing the text well is that in the debate, you have so many more options to choose from. Another and perhaps more profound reason is that if you know the text so well that everything that does not accord with it seems funny, you find yourself thinking like Jesus more and more and making decisions that he would make. Again, become jealous for the text. Finally, we must have an answer for all those who are wanting to debate doctrine and contradict the basics of Christianity as revealed in both the Old and New Testaments. Sound doctrine is much more of a key than I think most Christians really realize because as we begin to sweep more and more into this, it just seems like we're sweeping into a chaotic time here in human history. We're going to have to depend on what we know is true and not what others tell us is true. This doesn't mean go out and read the latest prophecy book and develop a doctrine based on the latest speculation. What it does mean is to get serious about how evangelical Christianity articulates itself. Go out and get a book like, or a set of books like Systematic Theology 1, 2, 3, and 4 by Norman Geisler, and use that to develop a strong foundation. Again, perhaps the most important thing, I'll say it, become jealous for the text. Chris?
Yeah, verse 9, it's interesting. It took me reading this verse a few times to really understand that that's what he was trying to say. He says, holding fast to the faithful word as he has been taught, that he may be able by sound doctrine both to exhort and to convince the gainsayers. And here is when he kind of shifts gears and starts talking about a lot of the false prophets and stuff that another part of Titus's job is to take care of these guys, not just appoint new pastors, but he's also got a handful of really bad dudes running around teaching false doctrine. So a pastor has to be diligent in his study of the word, and he must persevere in that study. He must be at it all the time. In fact, I get the impression that, and it says this, there's a verse that eludes me, and I should have hunted it down, where it basically is saying that, they are to be in the Word daily and seeking the Lord in prayer. That was sort of the pastors, these guys' job. And whether there was one or there was many or they were the same thing as elders, it really doesn't matter, but that's what their job was to seek the Lord in prayer for the will of Jesus for the church, because he's the head of the church, not any of these guys. And so they're in prayer to seek his will, and also seeking his will by reading the word daily. That was their job. One of the reasons here is to be strong enough in their doctrine to stand up to the false teaching. And it seems that Satan had, in some ways, at this time in history, kind of gone to a plan B, where he began to turn his attention to false doctrine among the church. And we see evidence of this throughout the scriptures, like in the letter to the Colossians, where they were believing some kind of New Age, quasi-Gnosticism thing going on there, or in Galatians, the Judaism thing, just on and on and on. False doctrine takes any kind of form that it can, whatever your paradigm is. There's a false doctrine just for you, and I see this all the time with new believers, they're often very vulnerable to false teachings of all kinds. And you can be sure that Satan is going to try to get you to believe something at that first bit. And it's interesting because it always has some form of truth, and it seems innocuous, or you can still have this and everything else that you are believing, but when it's fully developed, it leads into some type of bondage, and so it's hard to see that where it's going. But the best thing that I say, and I think really ties to this verse, the best thing that a young believer who is desiring to learn and to learn fast is to find out about doctrine. And one of the best ways to do that is just to listen to the Bible, read the Bible, obviously, in a serious way, to study it. This is a good example. Listening to this show or listening to all the other shows out there, Bible studies, is a great way. You might not know who to trust when you're, a believer and coming out of it all, and you don't know who's teaching right and who's teaching wrong. But the more that you listen to, if you get a just cornucopia of different, let's say on this particular book, the book of Titus, if you went and found all the verse by verse or just every study of Titus that you can find, you're going to get start to get a picture of what is the consensus and what makes sense with the text, and slowly you start to develop strong doctrine and understanding. That's essentially what happened with me. I didn't go to any kind of school or anything. I just listened to a lot of Bible teaching on my MP3 player, and I had a lot of time to do it when I was in a band and traveling a lot. So if you are at a work situation where you can listen to your MP3 player a lot, this is a perfect opportunity for you to get strong in doctrine, so that when somebody tries to convince you that whatever the false doctrine is, then you're going to be able to say, no, that doesn't sound right at all. You're going to be defended against it because of your study in the Word. And that verse concludes the first section, the first study in Titus, and we'll be back with you next week. You can check out our website, which is versebyversebibleteaching.com, for more archives, and you can contact us there for any reason. So I guess that's it. We'll see you next week, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.